You're 18 years old, standing in a high school hallway, and they tell you that a signature on a dotted line is your passport to the future. They don't tell you that the ink in that pen is actually a blood-red contract for decades of financial servitude. Fast forward 10 years. You have the degree on the wall, but you're living in a cramped apartment with 3 roommates, watching your bank account bleed out every month just to cover the interest on a loan that never seems to shrink. You did everything right, yet you're starting your life $100,000 behind the finish line. This is the American dream on life support. The $1.7 trillion anchor. The numbers are staggering, but the human cost is even worse. Total student loan debt in the US has crossed the $1.74 trillion mark. To put that in perspective, that is more than the total credit card debt of the entire country. We have an entire generation of doctors, teachers, and engineers who aren't consumers or investors. They are interest-generating assets for the government and private banks. The negative amortization trap. The most soul-crushing part of the student debt loop is the math. Many graduates find themselves in a cycle of negative amortization. They make their monthly payments, sometimes $500 or $800, but because the interest rates are so high, often between 6% and 12%, the actual balance of the loan increases instead of decreases. You are literally paying to stay in debt. It's a financial treadmill set to a speed that most people can't keep up with for 30 years. The housing market paralysis. Why aren't millennials and Gen Z buying homes? It's not because of avocado toast. It's because of the debt-to-income DTI ratio. When a bank looks at a 30-year-old with a $60,000 salary but $120,000 in student loans, that person is a high-risk ghost. They can't get a mortgage. This has created a massive bottleneck in the housing market, where the starter home cycle has completely broken down. The capital that should be building equity in a home is instead being siphoned off to service old tuition bills. The innovation gap. When you owe 6 figures to the Department of Education, you don't take risks. You don't start that tech company in your garage. You don't move to a new city for a dream job that pays a little less at the start. You take the safest, most soul-crushing corporate job you can find because you need the health insurance and the steady check to keep the debt collectors at bay. We are losing the next great wave of American innovation to the sheer weight of compound interest. The education cartel. While students drown, universities have become hedge funds with classrooms. Since the 1980s, the cost of a degree has risen over 1,200%, vastly outstripping inflation and wage growth. Because the government guarantees these loans, universities have no incentive to lower costs. They just keep building luxury dorms and hiring more administrators, knowing the 18-year-old with a pen will keep signing the check. The psychological toll, the weight of the invisible chain. Beyond the balance sheets, there is a profound psychological erosion occurring. When your adulthood begins with a debt that feels mathematically impossible to escape, your entire worldview shifts from abundance to survival. This has birthed the delayed life syndrome. Millions of Americans are putting off marriage, delaying having children, and skipping preventative health care because they simply cannot afford another monthly line item. We aren't just looking at a financial crisis. We are looking at a demographic winter triggered by a predatory lending system. The bankruptcy immunity. Here's the most dark urban reality of the situation. In the United States, you can declare bankruptcy for a failed casino, a botched real estate flip, or a fleet of private jets. But thanks to specific lobbying in the mid-2000s, student loans are virtually impossible to discharge in bankruptcy. This debt is sticky. It follows you through unemployment, through disability, and in some cases, the government can even garnish your Social Security checks in your 70s. It is a life sentence for a choice you made when you weren't even old enough to buy a beer. The wealth gap multiplier. This loop doesn't hit everyone equally. It acts as a wealth gap multiplier. Students from wealthy families graduate debt-free and immediately start investing their income into the stock market or real estate, assets that grow. Students from the working class graduate with a massive debt burden, spending their prime earning years paying back principal and interest, a liability that shrinks their net worth. The education system, which was sold as the Great Equalizer, has effectively become a tool for permanent class stratification. The 2026 reckoning. As we move through 2026, the cracks are widening. With the cost of living remaining stubbornly high and the grace periods of the past years long gone, the student debt loop is reaching a breaking point. We are seeing a massive shift in the national consciousness, a realization that the prestige of the degree wasn't worth the price of the cage it came in. The question for the next decade isn't how students will pay back the $1.7 trillion. It's whether the economy can survive a generation that has nothing left to spend. The death of the meritocratic promise. The most chilling aspect of the student debt loop is that it has successfully commodified the hope of the working class. For decades, the narrative was simple: education is the way out. But in the current landscape, education has become the way into a cycle of perpetual liability. When a 22-year-old enters the workforce, they aren't just a professional. They are a pre-packaged revenue stream for a loan servicer. This debt isn't just a number on a screen. It is stolen time. It is the 5 years you didn't spend saving for a house, the decade you spent working a job you hated just to stay afloat, and the retirement that is slowly vanishing over the horizon. The systemic brain drain. We are currently witnessing a silent intellectual stagnation. When the brightest minds of a generation are burdened by six-figure debts, they stop chasing the big ideas and start chasing the big checks. We have world-class engineers building ad-click algorithms and potential medical researchers going into high-end plastic surgery, not because they want to, but because their debt-to-income ratio demands it. The American economy is effectively cannibalizing its own future innovation to pay for its past tuition inflation. The ultimate financial paradox. As we look toward the fiscal reality of 2026, the paradox is undeniable. The United States has the most educated workforce in its history, yet this workforce is becoming increasingly economically immobile. We have created a society of elite poor, people with master's degrees who still qualify for low-income housing. The degree, once a golden ticket, has become a heavy iron key that no longer fits the lock of the middle class. The $1.7 trillion isn't just a debt. It's a structural redistribution of wealth from the youth to the financial institutions. Unless there is a fundamental shift in how the cost of entry to society is financed, the American dream will remain exactly that: a dream you have to be asleep to believe in. The loop doesn't end with a graduation ceremony. For most, the ceremony is just the sound of the cell door locking.